Before credit cards, before paper money, before coins, before literally any of that, humans still needed to buy things and sell things and tax things and occasionally purchase a human being with chocolate. Because that happened. That was a real Tuesday for someone. Today we're going through 10 of the strangest currencies that actually built ancient empires. The shells, the stones, the beans, the bricks, and the giant unmovable rocks that somehow kept entire civilizations running. And yes, one of them is a 4,000-pound limestone disc the size of a small car. That people used as money that they couldn't move. We'll get there. Let's start in Mesopotamia, around 2500 BC. Ancient Sumer, the cradle of civilization, where humans had just invented writing, law, cities, mathematics, and apparently also showing off how much money you had. Because Mesopotamian citizens didn't carry coins. They wore their money, literally. Silver rings, silver ingots, coiled around their wrists and necks like the world's first wealth display. You didn't say, "I'm rich" in ancient Sumer. You just walked in wearing 47 rings and let the silver do the talking. Merchants would literally weigh these rings on scales to determine value. No stamped value, no denomination. Just, how much does your arm weigh? Clay tablets found in Sippar, Iraq, over 3,700 years old, record silver ring transactions for wages, trade, and taxes. 2 millennia before Greece or Rome ever minted a single coin. Mesopotamia had already figured out money. They just figured it out in the form of jewelry, which honestly was a marvel. But silver rings were for the wealthy? What did regular Sumerian people use? Clay. Tiny, handheld-shaped clay tokens. Archaeologists have found over 8,000 types of these things, shaped like animals. Grain, sheep, honeycombs, fish. Each one represented a specific quantity of a specific good. 1 clay sheep token equals 1 actual sheep. 1 clay grain token equals 1 measure of barley. It was basically a physical spreadsheet. Pre-city Sumerian villages used only 5 token types. By the time massive cities like Uruk exploded in size, they needed 16 token types, covering everything from wool and fish to perfume and cloth. Because apparently once civilization hit a certain size, you really needed a clay token specifically for perfume. The most insane part, these tokens didn't just function as money. Scholars now believe they evolved directly into writing. Ancient Sumerian scribes started pressing token shapes into wet clay to record them. Those impressions became symbols. Those symbols became cuneiform. Cuneiform became the world's first writing system. Meaning, accounting invented language. We learned to write because someone needed a receipt. You really can't make this up. The pharaohs, the pyramids. One of the most powerful empires in human history. How did they pay the workers who built it? Beer and bread. Not metaphorically, literally. Workers received daily rations of bread and barley, not as food bonuses, as their actual salary. New Kingdom records show workers could trade part of their rations in markets. Your wages were fungible. Barley was currency. Beer, brewed from that barley, but was essentially a state-issued paycheck. Which means ancient Egypt was running a civilization where the government technically paid you in alcohol. And historians act surprised the pyramids got built. Motivation solved. China's Shang dynasty started with cowrie shells as currency, imported from the coast, traded inland. But then came the innovation nobody expected. Bronze-shaped like tools, knife-shaped coins, spade-shaped coins, bridge-shaped coins. Stamped by the state with a denomination. The world's first official coins, and they looked like tiny farming equipment. Not round discs, not bars, miniature spades. As if someone decided, what if money looked like something you'd use to dig a grave? Which, considering what money does to people, is oddly accurate. These circulated during the spring-autumn period, around 770 to 476 BC. Farmers carried small bronze knives in their pockets as change. The imagery wasn't random. Tools represented labor, production, tangible value. It was almost philosophical. Your money looked like the work that earned it. Deep stuff for a bronze spade. Cowrie shells used across Africa, Asia, Europe, Oceania, and even colonial America. for thousands of years, and the reason is genuinely impressive. Cowrie shells are nearly impossible to counterfeit. They're standardized by nature, durable, portable, beautiful. They hold up in heat, cold, humidity. You can't fake them easily. You can count them fast. They travel light. Basically everything you'd want in a currency, except they came from the ocean. King Gezo of Dahomey, the Kingdom of Benin, famously refused gold in favor of cowries. His reasoning: cowries always guaranteed a fair price. Gold fluctuates, gold gets shaved, gold gets debased. A shell is a shell. That's a man who understood economics. In some regions, 1,000 cowries had a fixed exchange value, the ancient equivalent of a standardized denomination. The cowrie was genuinely the world's most universal currency for a longer period than any modern money has existed. Let that sink in. Your dollar has been around for 250 years. The cowrie ran for thousands. Mesoamerica. No precious metal coins, no silver rings. The Maya and Aztecs built massive, complex empires on two things: cacao beans and cotton cloth. And the pricing system they developed was brutally specific. Aztec codices record the following market rates: 1 avocado, 1 bean, 1 tomato, 1 bean, 1 turkey hen, 100 beans, 1 goat, 20 beans, 1 slave, 100 beans, 100 cacao beans, the same price as a turkey. Which either means turkeys were incredibly valuable, or something darker about how the Aztec economy valued human life. Both, probably both. For larger transactions, cloth stepped in. Cotton fabric cut to standard lengths was the high-denomination bill. The entire economic infrastructure of millions of people, trade, tribute, taxation, markets, ran on beans and fabric. And here's the viral detail nobody talks about. The Spanish conquistadors arrived to conquer gold and found the locals treating chocolate like cash. They were genuinely confused. Meanwhile, the Aztecs were confused why anyone would want yellow rocks. One of history's greatest economic misunderstandings. This one gets dark. Manillas, U-shaped metal bracelets, bronze or iron, mass-produced in Europe from the 15th century onward, specifically designed for West African trade. They became ordinary market currency across coastal West Africa, used for everything: food, goods, livestock, trade disputes. Ordinary, functional, widely accepted. And then European slave traders adopted them as the preferred payment currency for the transatlantic slave trade. Millions of manillas were cast in foundries in England and the Netherlands and shipped to West Africa as purchasing power. Researchers call them metastasizing symbols. They spread precisely because empires needed them to. Today, tens or hundreds of these rusted bracelets fill museum drawers worldwide, forgotten relics of a currency system that was designed by one continent to extract people from another. One of the most disturbing economic histories on the planet. Nendo Island, Solomon Islands. Here until the 1980s, people used something called tevao, feather money. Each tevao coil is made of plant fiber covered with 50,000 to 60,000 red bird feathers, decorated with seeds and shells rolled into a double coil, used for marriage payments, tribute, and major purchases: pigs, canoes, land. The brighter the feathers, the higher the value. These weren't mass-produced. Each one was handcrafted over extraordinary lengths of time. They were simultaneously legal currency, rare luxury goods, artistic masterpieces. Try to imagine your wallet containing something that also belongs in the Louvre. Today, one tevao coil is a museum piece, the last transaction currency that was also, genuinely, a work of art, the most beautiful money ever made. Compressed tea bricks, used as legal tender and wage payment across Tibet and Mongolia until the 20th century. Tea was pressed into solid rectangular bricks and used exactly like money. Travelers used them to pay for lodging. Merchants traded them for goods. Workers were paid in them. And here's the exchange rate that breaks people's brains. One horse cost approximately 20 tea bricks. A horse, the most important transportation technology in the ancient world. 20 breakfasts. Mongol traders reportedly bargained by stipulating so many bricks of tea for mules, horses, and other large goods. Why tea? Because tea was scarce inland, essential for health at altitude, and universally desired. It had real intrinsic value to everyone who used it. which is a better backing than most modern currencies can claim. Your coffee habit could literally pay rent in 15th century Mongolia. And finally, the greatest, most insane, most philosophically disturbing currency in the history of human civilization. Rye stones, Yap Island, Micronesia, giant carved limestone discs, up to 6 feet across, up to 4,000 pounds used as money. Money they could not move. Here's how it worked. When a Yapese person made a payment with a rye stone, they didn't physically transfer it. They just told everyone. The stone stayed in the village, ownership transferred in collective memory. Everyone in the community simply remembered whose stone it was now. The stone's value wasn't in the stone, it was in the story of the stone, how large it was, how skillfully carved, how many men died transporting it from the Cowrie Islands 300 miles away. More deaths during transportation equals higher value. One rye stone donated to the Smithsonian only cost $200 to acquire, because the buyer didn't have to transport it across the Pacific. He just took ownership of its story. Sound familiar? A currency where the object doesn't move, only the record of ownership transfers, and value is determined entirely by collective agreement and historical record? Yap Island invented the blockchain in 500 AD. I'm not joking. Economists have literally written about this comparison. So here's what all 10 of these currencies have in common. None of them were money because they were inherently valuable. Shells weren't money because shells are rare. Beans weren't money because beans are precious. Stones weren't money because stones are hard to find. They were money because everyone agreed they were money. That's it. That's the entire secret of currency. Any object at all, becomes money the moment enough people decide to trust it. Which means your bank account, your credit card, the numbers on your screen right now, same thing. Different shells. Ancient Mesopotamia looked at silver rings and said, "This is value." The Aztecs looked at chocolate and said, "This is value." Yap Island looked at an immovable limestone disc and said, "This is value." And the terrifying thing is, they were all correct, because money was never about the object. It was always about the agreement. And if that agreement collapses, so does the empire, every single time.